All right, finally, here we go. Hey, everybody, and we're back. So we're finally through book two, into book three, and I read also the first couple chapters of book three because I figured, oh, it's pretty short, and wanted to start really getting through it so we can finally get to moss flowers. So, all right, so I figured we'd go a bit more quickly. So, okay, so Methuselah has died, um, and Matthias awakens from a dream in which basically Matthias appears to him and says he can't be with him anymore. He sulks for a bit, but then he decides to move on and try to find the sword. He escapes, meets the Gaussum, Captain Snow, and Squire Julian Gingivere. Meanwhile, Clooney plans his second attack. It starts It's gone pretty bad. It goes okay at first, with the tunneling going on in the back, and then ramming down the door. But then there's a thwarted, so Clooney goes off to hatch another scheme while leaving Cheese Deep in charge, and things end badly for Cheese Beef. Uh, um, so there we are. That's all caught up to kind of where we are. So, um, what to talk about in this one? So. Reading it, I do think Matthias moves on just a little bit quickly from his grief over Methuselah, but um we gotta get the plot going too, though. So I think we're good on that, and we do have Basil's tag here cheering him up, which is nice and a very good scene. So that does help. Um, Very typical, like Bucko, like don't sulk and move on. And it may kind of seem insensitive, especially kind of by modern standards of what we consider grief and how we deal with it. But I think it works well, and there is some truth about the need to move forward, especially considering they're in dire straits anyway. They can't be sulking around anyway because they have things to do. We're being invaded by Clooney, and we still have to get the sword, so there's no point in moping around for too long. We're not in a state where grief is needed. Instead, action is needed. So I think that's important to realize that action is, of course, needed. By Armand's own standards, this may seem a bit insensitive, but I think it works, and Basil like recognizes like that this is just the way it is. Move on. And like Methuselah being the cranky guy we know he is, probably actually would actually agree with Basil. Um, and so I think it's all fine there. Um, um, Interestingly, also, so then we have Matthias going on and sneaking out underneath everybody's backs. Again, so we have a lot of that with Matthias and a lot of animals just sneaking about doing their own thing. It's like the Abbott really needs to get on his game. It's like, should we check and make sure Matthias doesn't escape? How about Basil's dad and Jesse going out on their own to do their own thing? It's like, Constance completely always going off doing her own thing. It's like, does the Abbott have like no control over anybody anymore? I guess he's lost complete control and can't really do any much about it. But it's kind of funny in that sense. So the three things on Matthias' side is we meet has his encounters with the three important characters for the end that we yet to meet, which are the Gaussum, Captain Snow, and Squire Julian Gingivere. Um, I really like the dynamic uh of the shrews. So the Gaussum are kind of like the last big thing that kind of gets um a staple of Redwall overall. There's some other stuff, but This is like in terms of Redwall, the Redwall side. This is kind of the big other thing that gets introduced is the squabbling Gaussum. Um, I forgot the rock thing. I think that does appear in several other places, but I like how Matthias just is like nobody really actually cares about the stupid rock. Really, it really kind of just it's a way of keeping order, but only for a brief period of time. It allows at least some order to the chaos, but in the end, it's kind of like a useless thing. It doesn't allow anyone to really act or do anything, and that's kind of Matthias's point. It's kind of like this rock in the end is stupid, and you're just a bunch of gaggling, quarrelsome shrews who can't really actually do anything. And it's like even the log it's interesting. I did not remember that there's a president apparently in like the log is the leader, but then there's apparently a president of the union, which is a little odd, but it's really kind of funny where it's almost like maybe the log is less has less power than he thinks he does, um, which I found kind of funny considering later books. But yeah, I thought that was strange. Um, but yeah, so the quarrelsome Gaudsome that just basically they can't really have a good sense to make up their minds, and you kind of almost get the sense like when they're voting on Matthias, like none of them really know why. They just decided, like, oh, half of us decided, half of us don't. We don't want because we really don't want to make any real decisions, and so I wonder if Brian Jakes is making some commentary there. Personal, it's not really there, but I wonder if Brian Jakes is making some commentary about inability of people to actually do anything and make up their minds. So it's really funny. And like they talk, and the idea that the Gaussian in a sense talk a good game, but they really don't have any sense of what they're doing and why. They're just as afraid. Like they go, like they'll confront Matthias, but it's like let's not go anywhere near the cat, or we're gonna forget the cat entirely. Yeah, that's a big thing. And then we're not going anywhere near a big fat owl. Again, it's not like they don't have reason to fear Captain Snow. He clearly is unstable, braggadocious, not very considerate fellow, and definitely has his anger issues. So it's not like Captain Snow is a reasonable owl. But it really is kind of funny to me how much uh, that doesn't work. And then we have Squire Julian Gingivere, which is kind of like this resigned to his life kind of person who's just like, oh, woe is me. I guess I'm last on the line, and I won't talk to anyone, and I don't really look very doubtful on the future of the world, and I don't want to talk to Snow anymore because he's insulted me, and I've insulted him, and all sorts of other stuff. It's funny how, like, I remember Squire Julian Ginger being a bit more nice, but he's actually not, like, super nice. Like, he's more just annoyed. Like, he's just that annoying, like, I can't fully be bothered. In things, oh, let me, and I've inherited a farm that I don't really have much power over. I'm just kind of on my last legs. Just leave me alone kind of character. I just find that really interesting as well. And then, of course, the worst is Captain Snow, who's just, as again I said, braggadocious, not very kind or considerate, basically a selfish guy, and is really just doesn't really care what anyone else does or says, so long as you just address him in the proper format. He's not very kind or thoughtful or in any way. And it's like, well, and again, he may be right about him getting killed, but Asmodeus, in the sense of like, oh, like, Asmodeus, and I would just end up both dead. Like that's perfectly valid opinion, but he doesn't present it in a way where it's a very like almost like logical conclusion. It's more uh, like a cowardly conclusion. I can't be forced to deal with him. I just want I like being called Captain Snow, but doesn't really mean that I have any real power or can really do anything. And that's kind of like all three. I'd never thought of that as a connection between Squire, Julian, and Gingivere, the Gaussum, and Captain Snow, as they talk maybe slightly like they have some sort of authority and been given some sort of power, but they really don't have anything. Cap Snow just lands on his reputation. The Gaussum are just tough, just present themselves as tough because nobody knows who they are, and they're just tiny little ruffians who just bicker and quarrel, but can't really make up their minds. And Squire Julian Finvier is just a guy who just wants to be left alone. And so none of them have any real power and real ability to do anything. It's Matthias who's the only one of the three that's actually really willing to do something. It's like you kind of almost get the sense like maybe the Gaussum or Captain Snow or Squire Julian Gingerbeer have they decided to work together or at least taken some sort of authority that maybe one of them could have actually taken care of Asmodeus. And again, it's not like Asmodeus is a nothing burger and is a something to like sneer at and like pretend isn't a huge giant issue, but there's almost like the sense like they haven't done anything or want to really do anything about the snake. Just leave us all alone and we'll be fine, and leave our territories alone and we'll be fine and stuff like that. So kind of interesting how very little all three seem to really care about anything. Uh, so yeah, I think that's kind of the most interesting bit of that is just how the contrast between all three and how very little. Now we're going to see a change, but it's going to be, and so that's going to be important. But at this moment, all we're seeing is that all three seem to just not really get along or understand or care, and they're all pretty just self-focused. Pretty much, a lot of it is self-focused. Um, um, Matthias is basically just ratting on all of them. Um, and then I do, but and like he's willing to do things. Matthias, with his promise to Captain Snow and his willingness to drive a hard bargain with Captain Snow, even though it's like Captain Snow is just making a bet. That's the other funny thing about that whole thing. It's not like Captain Snow is really doing anything. The only thing he the only thing that's going to happen is all on Matthias is the promise that he's making. It's all to do with Matthias and what he'll do, and nothing to do with Captain Snow, really, in the long run. But Matthias is willing to take that bet for the benefit of everybody, and so I kind of like that as well. And so, like, he's telling him about, the deal he made, and it doesn't really seem to make much of a difference. It's like, we just can't violate our laws on this thing of going beyond the river. Why? Well, it's arbitrary, it seems pretty much to me. So, again, this kind of arbitrary nature of how they all three kind of treat things too. It's like almost arbitrary. It's like we just don't want to do things. Uh, all three of them. So, yep. I love the uh, transitioning. I love the battle sequence here. I love Silent Sam and his mom's plan with the bees and the wax. That's really fun. And the oil. And no, well, it's not bees, it's hornets. But still, it's kind of funny and like just just the clever plans they come up with. And like again, we get a reference to the moles, and they're clearly just prepared, waiting for that kind of last minute when the Tilconi and the weasels and stoats break through. Um, and so it's just a patient game mostly, except for this one kind of giant kind of blow to them that just really slows him down, but slows him down enough where Clooney himself has to rethink. And basically, once again, Clooney is saddled by imbeciles. And he's like, I can't really do anything about this, can I? Uh, he's so frustrated and so annoyed by all this. It's like, I'm the only smart one in this entire group, and I can't seem to do anything or say anything that will really make a difference. But he does have plans, and he has a plan to. Again, we see him tactically thinking. He just gets thwarted at every point. It's like again, fate is kind of conspiring against him. He hasn't really done anything like horribly wrong, but it hasn't really just made much of a dent. And like, Jess Squirrel even notes like the when they abandoned the battering ram, and Jess Squirrel takes a close look. The gates are still pretty okay. So yeah, it tells you just how much Clooney has kind of underestimated the whole situation once again, and he's just not prepared for kind of like just anything they'll throw at them and what they actually are willing to do. So uh, to save Redwall and stuff, and like again, he also doesn't know that he's been portrayed by Chicken Hound, so that'll take a toll on him once again. And we're going to see how this just basically leads to the only way Clune can win is through kind of deceitful means. We're going to see what that looks like and kind of treacherous means. Um, Not, of course, since Clooney isn't a traitor, but we'll see. Uh, what you'll see what I mean by that. And so the way Clooney operates just doesn't really seem to make much of a dent. Like he's pretty much ruled again, and I think I mentioned this in the last one, just ruled by fear. And but fear isn't enough. You actually have to have real confidence, real um, character behind you. And we of course see this with Cheese Thief, who's just the utter like, yeah, he's smart and he does have some charisma about him, but he's just even more selfish than Clooney in a sense, and is more just like, I'll do what it takes to get noticed and do what it takes to make catch the eye of Clooney, but beyond that, I really don't care. He's pretty selfish as well. And it's all really just about him getting a promotion. Once he kind of gets the promotion, he doesn't really want to actually do what it takes to to he just delegates authority, right? And delegating authority is not bad, and it can be wise when you're not all. Sometimes leaders are not always the smartest people, but they know how to delegate. But sometimes it's just a way of diluting responsibility, and Chief Thief is kind of the epitome of that. And we see what that happens when what that looks like when he just up and makes himself look and feel like Clooney, even though he has not nothing even Clooney has. Clooney at least has intelligence and is at least knows how to carry out at least a plan and at least be a motivator. Chief Thief is not much of a motivator. He's a bit charismatic, but again, in the end, he's not really interested um, in anything even other than just pure recognition, which allows him certain benefits. And so, and that leads to his downfall in this chapter. The whole thing with Constance and the Beaver, I always liked, especially considering um, like this is the only time again a beaver is really mentioned in the entirety of Redwall, which is just so funny, and that has to do with the fact that beavers are not native to England, at least at this time. They were probably at one point beavers in England due to all sorts of issues, and um, beavers aren't around anymore. And so he kind of used the Eurasian beaver, but I don't think he was really thinking, again, too much and being too specific. Again, we can kind of see some of the issues with that and how uh, Brian Jakes is just using a basic template, and so he's not thinking about the world building quite, got the world building quite down. So he throws in a beaver because beavers are cool, and it's kind of with him using his teeth to gnaw and to help Constance design the crossbow is really cool, and like his kind of and them just together silently working on this device, and everybody's like, leave the two alone to their devices, and it's like, Constance, what are you doing? It's like, hush. And so I kind of like all that. But yeah, the fact that beavers aren't really in um, Europe, or at least Britain, uh, is kind of funny. And this then will be the only time a beaver is mentioned in the entirety of Redwall. Kind of funny. But yeah, Cheese Thief meets his downfall. But Constance and the Beaver kind of make a mistake too, where they just assume they seize their first opportunity, and and while it makes sense in a certain way, um, sense of just how convenient it is, they don't stop and think how convenient this is and how um, fortunate it is that they've got Clune like that caught him that off guard, and it's like maybe you should have thought about that. Maybe you should have thought about that before just shooting off an arrow. And so even so, Cheese Thief makes an arrow, but in a sense, it's also the error of Constance and the Beaver and their desire to just end Clune once and for all. But it doesn't pan out the way that they think it should, as they're going to realize very quickly in the next chapters how much they've made a mistake. Um, and they haven't made as much a mistake as Chief Thief. Uh, so there you are. Yeah. So yeah, just some again brief thoughts and ideas. Again, if you have any more thoughts and ideas based upon these couple of chapters, I think we're like 20. This was 20, chapter 20 of book 2 to chapter 2 of book 3. So, yeah, if you have any thoughts on that section, please let me know in the comments below. And let me know what you have ideas for things I can do next year, especially since it'll be the 40th anniversary of Redwall. So yeah, I really think so yeah, these were actually some really fun chapters. I always like some of the more side characters of Redwall, and the Gaussum, Captain Snow, and Squire, Julian, and Gingivere are really fun in this chapter. And I like um some of the battle plans, and once again, Constance is always just so much fun, and just her need to just take it out and dish it out, and she does. She just sometimes doesn't uh, quite have the patience and the wisdom to really execute properly, and that can be her. But she's also very much just this one who's just willing to do whatever it takes to protect Redwall. And I think what I'll do at the end of this is I will actually review the Redwall graphic novel, which I have somewhere back there. I'll go over that as kind of a bonus for Redwall before we go into the bigger details. So I want to mention that since um, that'll be coming up, and we'll be doing our hair problem. Our hair problem series will come up, and we will do an assessment, more closer assessment, having read through the book now, of Basil Stag hair and where uh, can we assess what is great about this hair and what is not, and we're going to create a hair grading scale um, throughout the entirety of the books. Just because I think this is kind of one of the kind of ups and downs of the series, and one with more ups, but definitely there's a trend. So we'll definitely see how that all works out. Alrighty, thanks so much for listening. Bye.